This video will demonstrate the details of the medicine registration module in the Neurizon Neuromodulation database. Now, the medicine form or the medicine module is designed to give an accurate registration of a patient's present medicine consumption. That is, it is a spot registration of what medicine the patient is actually taking right now. It should be noted that only drugs that are relevant somehow to neuromodulation treatment are listed in the medicine module. That means that, for instance, antihypertensives or diuretics, so forth, are not in the database. All drugs are listed under their generic name to avoid any kind of misunderstandings, meaning that there are no brand names. To register simply for each item on the patient's medicine list, click on the name in the drop-down menu, click on the route of administration, and then press Add. Then a dose field will show up where you enter the dose. It should be stressed that all doses are total daily doses. That means it includes all PN doses. It should also be noted that even if there are two different formulations, for instance, a slow release version and a fast release version of the same drug, those should be combined into the total daily dose. It should also be noted that all doses are in milligrams per day, meaning that if it's, for instance, a patch, that would be micrograms per hour and so forth. You need to do a little bit of calculation. It has to be in milligrams per day to avoid any misunderstandings. Note also that if a patient takes a drug that is administered by more than one route, for instance, a patch and a parenteral administration, they can be entered twice, provided they have different routes of administration. When the list is complete, simply press Save. Now, a few notes on how the medicine module works. When a new medicine registration is opened, the data from the newest medicine registration is automatically loaded. That means if you see the patient repeatedly and there are only minor changes to the medicine list, it would be very easy because you would always get the registration that you made last time you saw the patient. If the list is simply unchanged since the last administration, all you need to do is just save the document to prove or to document that the registration is indeed up to date. If there are one or more drugs that have changed doses, simply change the drug dose by adjusting the number in the small dose field. It's very simple. If the patient has started a new drug, just add the new drug to the list, just like you did when you made the original list. It should be noted that any new drugs that you add will also be retroactively added with dose 0 to all medicine registrations that had come before that. And the reason is simply that if you know the patient is today taking, let's say, morphine 50 milligrams per day, and you didn't register that at previous registration, it must mean that the patient did not get morphine at that time. Since the medicine module adds the drug with dose 0 to previous medicine forms, it means that all of a sudden you can document that the patient actually did go from 0 to 50. If the patient has instead stopped using a drug, you cannot delete and you should not delete any drug from the list. Just change the dose of that drug to 0, because that also means that you can see which medicines the patient has tried over the course of the treatment, so you also know which ones you probably shouldn't start again. If a patient remembers that he or she does take a drug but not the dose, enter the drug but leave the dose field empty. The reason for that is that an empty field does not mean 0. An empty field, called also null or empty or blank, just means that we know the patient is indeed taking the drug, but we don't know which dose. Going back to the example before, where the patient, all of a sudden the patient is taking morphine 50 milligrams per day. If the patient did take morphine before, but just didn't remember the dose, it is important that you have already registered that the patient did take morphine before, but unknown dose, because that means you go from unknown to 50, which is a completely different thing than if you know the patient is going from 0 to 50. It sounds much more complicated than it is. Let me just demonstrate. In the database, as always with repeatable events, press New and then press Medicine. always, enter the date first, and let's say it is a registration that we did in July on the 9th. That means, as you can see by the number of days after SCS start, that this is a pre-operative medicine registration made 23 days before we actually start the treatment. And let's say that the patient is indeed, at this time, taking morphine. You see there are various administration routes, and that matters obviously for the potency of the drug. But let's say it's taking intral. Press add, and we know the patient is taking 50 milligrams per day. Let's say that he or she is also taking ibuprofen. That can also only be given intrally, and let's say it's a dose of 1200. And let's say that this patient has a fentanyl patch. That's a transdermal administration. And let's say it's 25 micrograms per hour. That would, you need to do a little bit of calculation, but that would correspond to 0.6 milligrams per day. So that's it. Press save when you complete the list. And as always, it shows up in the timeline, so you can go back there and review. Let us just, to demonstrate the principle, make a new medicine registration. And let's say that we did that today. And as you would see, the old medicine list shows up immediately, meaning that if the patient, for instance, now that we are after our treatment has started, let's say that the patient went down to 25 milligrams of morphine. You see here, it also notes that this dose has been changed. And let's say, just to demonstrate the principle also, that the patient is taking fentanyl, or started taking fentanyl, but by an enteral route. And let's say that is somewhere around 0.5 milligrams a day in total. We save it. And then just to demonstrate, if we go back to our previously registered medicine module, then you will see that now retroactively fentanyl at an intraoral administration has been added with a dose of 0. Let us imagine that at that time the patient all of a sudden remembered that he or she was actually also taking gabapentin enterally, but did not remember the dose at that time. Let's press save on the list. And if we then go forth to the medicine registration that we registered today, you will see that gabapentin has been entered into the form with a dose of 0. So if the patient still does not remember the dose today, simply remove the dose and press save. If he or she remembers that, yes, I am getting, let's say, 600 milligrams per day, you'd enter that in the field and press save. And that's it. That means that when you analyze this patient's changes in medicine consumption, afterwards you will know that from the 9th of July until the 26th of August, the patient went from 50 to 25 milligrams per day, unchanged ibuprofen, unchanged fentanyl patch, went from 0 fentanyl enteral administration to 0.5, and went from an unknown dose of gabapentin onto a confirmed dose of 600 milligrams per day.